When I was an undergrad, there was no way I would ever be a university professor. And when I was a university professor, there's no way I would ever be a department chair. And when I was a department chair, there's no way I would ever even think about becoming a dean. And when I was a dean, are you crazy, becoming university president? I would never do that.
Hello and welcome to the 10th episode of Beyond Me, the show where mechanical engineering students go beyond ME, and where the things we talk about are beyond us. We like thinking broader, we like thinking deeper. If you're new here, all our episodes are split up into chapters, so feel free to jump around as you wish. We also now record video, so if you'd like to see us and you aren't on YouTube or Spotify, click that link in the description. I'm Ben Jacobson, here with my co-hosts Liam Bennett.
Hey.
And Finian Richardson.
Hey, how's it going? Today we're talking with RIT's president, Dr. David Munson, about his background in electrical engineering, what he's done during his tenure here at RIT, and what his plans after are.
Thanks for tuning in. Let's get into it. All right, Dr. Munson, it's a pleasure to have you on today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yep. Now, before we get into things, you've had a pretty remarkable career as a researcher in signal processing and imaging systems, co-founding InstaRecon to commercialize fast algorithms for CT imaging. You spent more than 40 years in academia, becoming Dean of Engineering at University of Michigan, and going on to lead RIT as its 10th president, where among other achievements, you saw enrollment growth, launched a performing arts program, and accelerated the university into a leading research institute. But before we dive into your career and forthcoming retirement too much, let's talk about your background in STEM. Now, you have 4 degrees in electrical engineering, right? Tell us about that and your experience in the education system more as a student.
Yeah, I do. So let me even start earlier. Sure. As a kid, I grew up in, I think about the only things I really cared about were math and science and the outdoors, and that's where I spent my time, was building things and designing things and taking things apart if I wasn't out hiking in the woods or whatever. Anyway, when I entered college at the University of Delaware, I knew I wanted to do something that involved a lot of math and at least some science. And it took a while, but eventually I found electrical engineering at the end of my second year. Mm-hmm. And so majored in that as an undergrad, and then went to Princeton and got a couple master's degrees and a PhD, also in electrical engineering. At that time, digital signal processing was a brand new field. Up until that time, the processing of signals that could occur like in a radio or a television, or in a radar system, were done in what is called an analog way, using analog components like transistors and capacitors and that sort of thing. And digital processing is different. You actually collect samples of the signal, generally at uniformly spaced times. You store those samples in a computer, and you process the samples, and you might then reconvert those into an analog or continuous time waveform, or maybe you're just trying to extract information. Mm-hmm. And so I got into that field in the very early days when the very first textbooks were just starting to come out. Hmm. And so it was a great time for me. After my PhD at Princeton, I started a faculty career at the University of Illinois as an assistant professor in electrical engineering, and then they renamed the department to be electrical and computer engineering. But at any rate, pretty quickly I evolved my research into the direction of imaging systems, because I'd always liked telescopes and imaging systems when I was a kid, and got heavily involved in radar imaging. And then had I tell people I was just minding my own business at the University of Illinois for 24 years. I didn't have any administrative assignments, just a regular professor teaching and doing research. But at some point, each day became a little too much like the day before it, and so I took an administrative position at the University of Michigan, first as chair of electrical engineering and computer science. It was a combined department, still is actually, at the University of Michigan. And didn't get to do that job for too many years, because I pretty quickly became Dean of Engineering and had a 10-year run at that, and then moved to RIT. So my research and teaching career pretty much ended, I'd say, in my earlier days at the University of Michigan. It's been a while since I've actually taught a semester-length course. It's been a while since I've written a journal article. So
Yeah, I see.
And why did you decide to make that switch from teaching or like being a dean of engineering to more of a leadership role?
Yeah, so the Dean of Engineering role actually was pretty similar to my role at RIT, believe it or not. So at the University of Michigan, the engineering college is gigantic. They have 10,000 students just in engineering, and the university is very decentralized. And so the deans at Michigan pretty much get to run their own show, if you will. The student tuition, in my case, for the students in engineering, the student tuition all came to me. All the overhead on research, grants, and contracts came back to me. But then when we spent $1 on a salary of an employee or whatever in the College of Engineering, we paid a tax on that went back to the central campus because you got to pay somebody to clean the floors and cut the grass and everything else. And so the college is run somewhat independently. So that job was actually a surprising amount like the one I have now. The difference is when you're a president, you work with the Board of Trustees.
Right.
And the Board of Trustees do govern the institution. When I was a dean, I worked a little bit with the board at Michigan, but not on any kind of day-to-day basis. But here at RIT, as a president of the university, you do work with the board in a continuous way.
So, like, what's your day in like the life of an RIT president? Like, when do you wake up?
There's no typical day. I tend to be kind of a night owl. It's interesting when I was back in the days when I was, quote, a regular faculty member, I was an early riser and be one of the first ones into the office and see what you could get done in the first half of the day. And often was teaching 8 a.m. classes and that sort of thing, which I know are student favorites, right?
Of course.
But then when I got into administrative positions, I had to find a chunk of time when I could think and do some of my own work in the administrative post, if you will. And I just fell into that being at the end of the day. Everybody else is gone. You can stay in your office later, get home, have a later dinner, spend some time with my wife, Nancy. And so I tend to be a little bit of a later riser and going to bed pretty late.
I'm the same way. I love that. Always found it the most productive. When everyone's asleep, no one's bothering, you can just lock in on your work. I don't know. That's
entire campus is quiet.
Yeah.
Somehow you got to find some of that time for yourself and
Absolutely.
have your own thoughts.
Yeah, certainly. Just real quick, so is it InstaRecon? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, and actually my co-founder, Yoram Bressler, and I, we just I'll say abolished the company. The company is no longer as of just within the last year.
Okay.
But we had a good run.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, though.
Yeah, and let me just tell you, we didn't get rich off the company. It was based on some patents, and Yoram had more of the patents than I did. Some patents for fast algorithms for producing the images in CT scanners. And it turned out that our algorithms were most useful for production of very large images in terms of pixel sizes. And so the medical image scanners actually produce very small images. They're just 512 by 512 pixels. And so our algorithms didn't provide all that much speed up for those small images. But there are some other kinds of CT scanners used to image material specimens. Some of those have resolutions up to 16,000 by 16,000. Wow. And for those kinds of scanners, our algorithms could be like 100 times as fast as conventional.
Wow.
And so we did have our algorithms used in those kinds of scanners for many years. The problem is the market size is not that big for those scanners compared to medical scanners. So it turned out we did not have $1 billion idea.
Yeah, you don't really see any TV shows about like geologists.
Just jumping back into sort of your day-to-day here at RIT, what does the leadership chain work? Like, how do you interact with the Board of Trustees and other departments just for like a regular decision, say?
Boy, there's a lot I could say here. First of all, as I mentioned, the Board of Trustees, they really govern the university at a high level. They're responsible for financial oversight. They're responsible for hiring the president. And they're responsible for just being concerned about the future, basically, the institution, because the board really, and we all do, we want this university to be here forever. And so the Board of Trustees has about 10 or 11 committees that work in different areas. I sit in on a lot of those committee meetings. Those committees meet multiple times per year for each committee. I interact a lot with the chair of the Board of Trustees and work with the chair of the board and also the secretary of the university, who is Lisa Chase. She's vice president and secretary. The three of us set the agendas for the major board meetings, which occur 3 times a year. And we're always sort of educating the board on what's up at RIT, what are the future opportunities, what are the challenges, asking for their advice. And so there's that kind of managing up, if you will, when I work with the Board of Trustees. And then in the other direction, I have a whole set of vice presidents, really a set of outstanding people here on campus. And they work on everything from student affairs to the facilities, to fundraising, to enrollment management, to marketing and communications, and research, and then the list goes on and on. So I work with those vice presidents literally every day of every week. They're generally reporting on their activities, asking for advice. We're kind of plotting strategy, trying to squeeze the most out of every dollar around here, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So.
And what is that balance like, the kind of the financial side versus student experience side? Like, is that ever kind of tough when you're trying to, because this is a private institution, although it is a nonprofit, of kind of balancing how much revenue is coming in and then what the actual student experience looks like? Do you ever have to sacrifice one for the other ever? Like,
well, the way I look at it is when we spend $1, it's $1 that belongs to our students. I really view our money as student money. And so if we're spending money on research and equipment and what have you, that is to attract better faculty to teach our students. That's to attract better faculty to offer research experiences that are really at the cutting edge for our students. Or if maybe we're spending $1 on something like the shed, it's because it's going to be this incredible thing for our current students and also will help us attract students in the future. And so I really think of our dollars as belonging to the students.
yeah.
And when you're trying to decide, I guess along with the Board of Trustees, where you put money, what are your key considerations there?
I'd say in recent years, in fact, I'd say during my entire presidency, we're putting big bucks in areas that will set up the institution for the future. And part of it's about attracting better people. In the sense, we're trying to get better and better students, better and better faculty. And whoever has the most talent at the end of the day, they always win, as long as you're just smart about things. And so we've been working on that, and the shed is actually one of the elements there. Our Performing Arts Scholars Program is one of the elements there. We're getting incredible students through that program. And so there are a host of initiatives like that. They cost us money on the front end, but we grow our applicant pool, and RIT historically has served students from poor families extremely well, because that young person maybe comes from a lower middle class family in the southern tier of New York or northern Pennsylvania, some little village, and comes up here, gets an education, and holy cow, they landed a job with Microsoft or whatever the company is, right? But increasingly, RIT is about bigger things than just having a career. It's about changing the world. And we want to offer those kinds of opportunities to our students. They cost money. The students from poorer families, they need more financial support than do the other students. And so we've actually done some things here that are changing the economic mix amongst our student body. I don't think we're ever going to have to worry about being the school for rich kids. I don't think RIT will ever be that, and we don't want it to be that. But if you look at our demographic of this last incoming class, we have just as many students as ever from the poorest families, but we have considerably more students from wealthy families. And I love that, because that extra money from the wealthier families is going to help support the students on the lower end of the economic spectrum, plus give us money to do new things here on campus and make it better for all students. So when we're weighing considerations about, do we build this facility? It could be the stadium or whatever. A lot of things have been built recently. or are under construction, it's all about looking at that longer-term future and trying to attract a set of students that will, I think, make us really, really proud in the future, and their families will be able to help support the institution and make all this keep going.
Yeah.
Moving to the RIT carbon neutrality, the 2017 climate action plan, which is something that, like, I saw that when I was applying, and I was like, oh, this university is actually trying to offset some of the emissions that they're doing.
That's true.
And you have certain goals that you want to meet. Like the 2020 goal was, I want to say, like 25% reduction. Is that around? Right?
Yeah, I don't recall the exact plan, but certainly we're working over time toward carbon neutrality. For quite a while now, our electricity purchases have been carbon neutral. And it's a little easier to do it upstate New York because we can get some of our electricity from hydropower. Niagara Falls comes to mind, for example.
Yeah.
And so we've been carbon neutral in that area. The state passed some legislation just a few years ago that really mandates a schedule by which all institutions, whether companies or universities, must be carbon neutral. They talk about phasing out natural gas, et cetera. We've been taking a slower approach on that. I mean, what it'll require for us is for us to heat and cool our buildings using geothermal, and the geothermal is powered by electricity. But we've been asking a lot of questions at the state regarding where is that electricity going to be coming from? Are you going to generate the electricity by burning natural gas? And then you tell us we can't burn natural gas on our campus. That doesn't benefit anybody. And so the state is working hard on this, but we don't have the answers to our questions yet. And so we've done some studies. We've got an idea what it would cost to move everything to geothermal. It'll be extremely expensive. But we would do it if we can be assured that the electricity we're using to power the geothermal system is renewable electricity and carbon-free. So that's all being thought about by the utilities and the regulators, the folks at the state, and we're involved in some of those conversations. But I don't know the timetable for figuring out where's that electricity going to be coming from. There's a whole lot of hydropower up in Ontario that's not tapped. But then how do you get it to New York?
Right.
And also, as our economy becomes more electrified, a lot more electric cars, a lot more electric everything, that's going to put huge demands on our current distribution system. And our distribution system is actually pretty much tapped out in some areas of the state. So, for example, right now in Henrietta, New York, where we sit, there is no more electricity available. If a large corporation wanted to build a big plant right outside of Henrietta and had needed, I don't know, just name a number, 50 megawatts of power or something like that, you can't get it. It's not available. And so there's a lot that has to be figured out yet.
And now you guys we have a bunch of solar panels, right?
We do.
Those are up there. How much does that provide as like a percentage?
I don't know
or?
percentage-wise, but it's a pretty significant installation.
Yeah.
It's on the south side of campus. It's not easily visible, but if you go hiking around down there, you'll see them.
Yep.
And actually, at the President's House at Liberty Hill, where I live, we have a set of solar panels there, which probably provides something like, I don't know, a quarter of our electricity or something like that.
Okay.
And so, you know, we've done some things. It's partly demonstration projects just to show that it's feasible, and we could do more in the future. Yeah.
How do you work with the other campuses, like abroad? I know you have campuses in Dubai and I think in China, and some other places.
Croatia, Kosovo.
What does the leadership look like there? Like, is this because this is the central campus? Does this board of trustees have oversight over those, or how autonomous are they? And what's your involvement?
That's we can have a workshop on to try to answer this question. So each of our overseas operations is a little different from one to the other. The school where we have the most direct oversight, or the other campus where we have most direct oversight, is our operations in Croatia. In Croatia, that falls directly under a not-for-profit corporation that RIT established that oversees those campuses. We have a really big say in who's the president there. We have activities in both Zagreb, the capital city, and in Dubrovnik, which is a tourist mecca. That's what I'll call it. And those programs have been in existence for more than 25 years and have been going just great. We have a lot of alumni now that have graduated from those programs. These are super successful people, and some of them are serving on the board that oversees those campus activities. But when I say campus, you have to understand these are really buildings. It's not a campus where you have all these open green space and everybody's throwing frisbees and you got a stadium and all that. These are buildings. But we run that really. That's the closest to an extension of the parent RIT. We have also a campus in Kosovo, in Pristina, which is the capital city there. There are multiple buildings there. It feels a little bit more like a campus, but there's actually a Kosovar American sort of society that oversees that, and then they hire us to offer the programs there and to staff up the programs.
Interesting.
So we're involved, but we actually report to another organization that is sort of like their board of trustees or their overseers. And then Dubai is a different arrangement. In Dubai, which is a real honest-to-goodness campus, it's spectacular. The government of Dubai built a campus for us there, and because the government has a major investment, they have a lot of oversight as well as we here in Rochester. And that operation is just going gangbusters. They've got a couple thousand students now, and I would say check back in 6 or 7 years, they might have more like 4,000 students. And we're actually learning things from them, which you can't always say for an overseas operation. You generally think of an overseas operation as we're staffing it, all the information flow is in one direction. In Dubai, it's such a fascinating place, and things are changing so fast there. It's a huge business commercial center for that part of the world, not just the Middle East. It's like a 4-hour flight to India from Dubai. And in Dubai, I'd say about at least 85% of the people there are not from Dubai. They're not Dubai citizens, but they live there, they work there. And so our campus, with that couple thousand of students, we probably have something on the order of 100 nationalities just right there at a campus in Dubai.
That's really concentrated.
And they're very future-focused there. If you go to Dubai and see the architecture and their transportation systems and what have you, they're really inventing the future as fast as they can. And so, as I say, we're learning some things from them. Of course, they're also learning from us. So that's becoming a very important campus for us, and it is a real campus. And then in China, we teach some business programs. They're located on an international campus of Beijing Jiaotong University. This international campus is near a little town called Weihai on the east coast near the ocean. I like having that relationship because in these days where the temptation is to pose China as the boogeyman and the U.S. is going to be fighting with China, et cetera, I think it's good for people on both sides to actually know each other. And I adore the students there. And it's a very small operation, but we have just a little bit of a foothold there and have a lot of friends there, which I think is good for us, good for them.
It doesn't hurt to reach out.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And how often do you ever visit the global campuses? Yeah,
I do. So not frequently, but I would say at every commencement we have leadership from RIT here in Rochester that is present. Other times a year we visit on an as-needed basis. I've been to all the campuses. And I'll tell you a funny story about I've been to the China campus only one time. And there was a student commencement speaker. It was a woman student. And she got up and she proudly proclaimed, "I entered this university as a total nerd, and I leave this university as a geek." And so she kind of got the RIT vibe, even though she was majoring in business. So it was kind of cute.
That's nice. Yeah. We know you met the Crown Prince in Dubai as well, right?
Yeah, or it may have been his son.
Or his son.
Okay. Yep.
That's interesting.
So that was an interesting thing. This was to celebrate the opening of our new Dubai campus, and this was a few years ago now. Yep. And Yeah, a lot of bodyguards, a lot of officials around and what have you. But very nice gentleman. He spent serious time with the students, actually talking with the students, asking about the research projects, things they were working on that were all on display.
That's great.
So we have a great relationship there. And I want to credit our vice president for finance, Jim Waters. Jim has worked very hard on both that Dubai campus and our activities in Croatia, and made a lot of things possible, because some of this does come down to money and who's paying for what, and Jim has done a great job of that.
So going back to this campus of RIT, what are some of the most proud changes of yours that you've made over the past
since 2017.
Since 2017. So prior to my arrival, but I'd been selected as the new president, I had a meeting with Vice President John Trierweiler, who is in charge of marketing and communications. And John had just arrived here less than a year prior. And I sat down with John. I said, John, we need a story for RIT. We're going to be unique in what way? And it's got to be something more than we're a STEM discipline kind of oriented place, because every university has STEM disciplines, and all the state schools, especially the flagship schools, they've got gigantic programs in engineering and computing and da-da-da-da. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be more than co-op, because every institution is focusing really hard on internships. And at RIT, we know, but co-op's different. It's a longer period of time. We assist students in making those arrangements, and you might get to work with, say, 3 different companies and da-da-da-da. Yeah, but that prospective student coming out of high school, they may not fully understand the difference between a co-op or having a couple of summer internships. So it's got to be more than that. And we really settled on the fact that RIT, unlike most other STEM-based institutions, historically have been really strong in the studio arts. And so we know we've got this College of Art and Design, really good in glass blowing and ceramics and furniture design and jewelry design and especially photography, where we've got, 15 Pulitzer Prize winners. Yep. And so why don't we leverage that? So we really settled on emphasizing the work and growing the work we do at the intersection of technology, the arts, and design. And that's really become our thing. And that's what now in the outside world we're known for. And so we're pretty proud of that, because we're no longer confused with RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. They're more traditional. Yeah. We're not confused with Clarkson and a bunch of the other schools. And some of these, especially like Clarkson, when I got here, we were competing head-to-head with them. Students generally, if they're applying to RIT, they didn't even apply to Clarkson. That wouldn't have been the case before. And our rankings in U.S. News are going up. Rankings of some of our competitors are going down. Yep. And I attribute that to the fact that we're doing some new things and we're actually being recognized. So, but that it's one thing just to say, okay, we're going to focus on that. But when you pull back the curtain, it's got to be real. Mm-hmm. And that's where some of the facilities come in, like the Shed, the new theater that will come online in another year, the Performing Arts Scholars Program, which now has 2,100 students in it. And it's
I'm part of that.
Okay, it really is different. Yeah. RIT really is different. We're not just a PR machine, but you come here and it's really different.
Yeah. Like all the new facilities that you have, I came to RIT being like primarily like I did theater in high school and piano, and I applied and I got into the Performing Arts Scholarship. And normally, like, you tour campuses and you're like, okay, they have like a piano and like a theater, but you come here and you have the Glass Box Theater. You're about to have a theater that's about to, like you said, come online in a year, and you have pianos littered across the campus. Mm-hmm. Like, it's maybe like a 5-minute walk.
And we're still just getting started, honestly, and I want to give a lot of credit to the inaugural director of the School of Performing Arts, Erica Haskell. She came here with a vision that matched things I'd been thinking about, but, she and her teammates, boy, they've really carried it out. And we're just attracting incredible students. And at least for the first time I'm aware of, we've got students that are turning down Cornell and MIT and those kind of schools to come here.
It's incredible.
And with the stories I know, in every case, it was a performing arts student. And we all know, for those who are listening anyway, that you can't major in any of the performing arts at RIT. We don't have any majors. Every student is majoring in something else, but has an opportunity to undertake music, theater, dance, or it could be the circus arts or something. By the way, we're still missing one thing. I want a serious program in magic, and we don't have it. We got the Magic Spell Studios, but I mean magic, like make things disappear.
Yeah.
We ought to be able to do that at RIT. So I'm still holding out for that.
Can you tell us about just the RIT vision in general? Like, I know there's a lot more development that is planned beyond just the shed and the new theater.
Yeah, there is. And I'd say there's not so much that's like near term where, boy, we're going to do 10 new things in the next 3 years. The next big project is it's really following. We typically operate under a strategic plan which carries us out the next 5 or 10 years or something. And but there's a longer term document. It used to be called the Campus Master Plan. Now it's just called the Campus Plan. And a new campus plan was developed. I guess we concluded that work about 2 years ago or so. And it calls for densification of kind of the core of RIT. And let's quit spreading out. Let's densify. And it calls for building more residence halls right on campus, even closer perhaps to the middle of campus,
that'd be great.
To get a larger fraction of our students living on campus, to promote more interactions, more collisions, et cetera. And so right now we're undertaking the design of a sizable new residence hall that would be somewhere near the existing residence halls on the east side of campus, but maybe a little bit toward the field house. I think the location hasn't been determined yet. So that's underway. And
how big would this be? Like,
I would guess maybe could be 700 beds or something like that. So pretty sizable. And I'm predicting it will have some amenities besides just beds, if you will, and beds and lounges and restrooms. There may be first 2 or 3 floors, if it's one big building, might have shops or other kinds of things there.
Wow.
And so the idea is to create, ultimately little villages around campus that are a little more like Global Village. And so that's part of that plan. But we're getting started on that. And also we're going to be doing some landscaping on the residence side of campus to really dress things up. There are a lot of courtyards there that have a lot of potential, but that potential has not been realized.
There's like these concrete pillars that move up like staircases.
That's it.
And some people just like sit on them, but it's
Not really sure what to do with them.
So.
So I think within a few years you're going to see some pretty nice improvements to the landscaping over there. And then we've still got a bunch of the work yet to do in our existing residence halls. We had so many that weren't even air conditioned and pretty dismal looking inside. But
then the laundry rooms too.
Well, those have been renovated.
And
they're
so
nice now.
and it depends on the building, but a bunch of our residence halls now have been refurbished in terms of the common areas, the restrooms, the hallways, the lighting, et cetera. And we still need to finish off a few more buildings, and then we'll have those looking a lot better, and they'll be a lot more livable. So
Now, you talk about the densification. That sounds great because, it's already like 15 minutes to go from one side to the other, just
That's
walking.
right.
So
That's right.
You can only go out so far before it really becomes inconvenient for students.
That's
that makes
right.
Sense.
Yeah.
And start going up.
I'm used to being on really big campuses because I'm used to Big Ten schools that were 3 times as big as RIT.
Right.
But you're correct in what you say. I think RIT, the footprint for the core campus is big enough, and we need to start filling in spaces. In some cases, we'll be building new structures on existing parking lots, but in order to do that, we've got to build parking decks because we still have to have space for parking. And all of this will unfold over a period of decades. It's not going to happen in 3 years or 5 years, but we're going to see a lot of continued building on our campus, and at some point we're going to see parking decks rather than parking lots.
And how much say do you specifically, since you're retiring at the end of this year, how much say do you have in these, long-term improvements?
I would say I've sort of had my say in terms of I had a lot of input into the campus plan, and it's a document, it's there. And to the extent people decide to pay attention to it, it will help guide what happens. But I don't expect to be consulted on these things after I retire.
Hey, knock, knock.
Yeah.
How often is that document like redone? You said that you were working on it 2 years ago. But
Yeah, I think that probably hadn't been looked at for at least 20 or so years, something like that.
Okay.
And so I would label this version as kind of a new document rather than just an update of the old document.
Okay.
It's a pretty cool thing, though, that when we were looking at the location for the theater that's under construction and settled on where you currently see that occurring, we went back and checked this really old campus plan. It had a theater in exactly that location.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
And so
Did you
it's
know that when
pretty
you were-
amazing. I did not know that when I was involved in the conversation where we're going to put this. After thinking and walking around looking at things, it became pretty obvious where it should go. And then somebody else pointed out to me, they said, Dave, that was in the plan that's been sitting on a shelf. But I had not seen that plan.
How long are these documents? Because you said shelf. It kind of sounds like it's in a binder.
Well, so the new document or the newer document, first of all, it has a lot of images and computer-generated graphics and things to show you what the campus can look like. So it's not like you're just reading an encyclopedia or something if you look at it. A lot of pictures, a lot of things that give you the look and feel of the future. And that document, it's probably something on the order of 100 pages, but it's lots of pictures.
Okay.
So now, before having this podcast, we put out a questionnaire to the students to see if they had any things there.
So this is where I get in trouble.
Pretty mild question, but I one thing that did come up was people wondering about the gender ratio of the school.
Yeah.
And how it is very male heavy, which
Which is not
traditionally was-
okay.
Yeah, which is changing in general across the country in STEM programs and universities in general. But how is that at RIT, and how are they?
Yeah,
is
so
RIT trying to change
here's
it?
I'll tell you a funny story, and then we'll talk about the nuts and bolts of this. When I arrived, I pronounced, and we had about maybe 35% women on campus, and I pronounced we've got to get it to 40%. And the reason I named 40 is if it was 40-60, it would look kind of even. I'd loved
Right.
50, but 50 seemed awfully hard. So 40% women. And then years later, I discovered that my predecessor, President Bill Destler, he had put out a pronouncement, 40% women. And then I discovered that Bill's predecessor, Al Simone, president prior to Bill, he put out a proclamation, 40% women, saying, okay, we've been working on this for decades, and we haven't moved the needle very much. Now, point of fact is we've got, women groups, women in computing, women in engineering, women in science. We've got all those groups. We've got all kinds of special recruiting we do. There are some special scholarships and da-da-da-da. And the point is, without all those special efforts, we wouldn't even be where we are. So we went out and checked with a national consulting firm and said, hey, these are the disciplines we offer. What would you expect if we work really hard at this, that our percentage of women on our campus would be amongst the undergrad student body? And the answer was exactly what you have.
Yeah.
And so what's the answer to this? The biggest part of the answer is adding disciplines that preferentially attract women. So what does that mean? It means we need to grow in the health sciences and in the life sciences, maybe some other places. Like in a school of nursing, for example, they work so hard to attract men into nursing. It's a big, big thing. And I would love to have that problem on our campus. And so actually we're working on adding health programs, health-related programs right now, and we're working on designing a school of nursing.
Yeah, okay. So not as much trying to forcibly put more women into STEM than it's just naturally.
Yeah, I think
more than
we're
just
always
the interest.
we're
Yeah.
always going to be working on that as
Right.
hard as we can. But I think after 20 or 30 years of doing that, you
Right.
got to say let's keep going, but let's call it what it is. The needle's not moving very much. And the one reason it's not moving very much is every one of our competitor schools is doing exactly the same thing.
Right.
They're doing everything they possibly can to attract women into STEM. And there's some schools that are wealthier than we are that have more scholarships that are designated specifically for women students and that sort of thing. And so if you look at some of the wealthiest schools in the United States in their STEM disciplines, they're somewhere closer to 50-50, but it's because of scholarship money. And in our case, I think however we do it, we just need to change the gender balance on campus. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
Speaking of student-submitted questions, how often do you eat on campus at the dining halls we have versus...
I would say that almost every day I'm on campus, I grab lunch either in the RITs
Seen you at Brick a bunch of times.
or in
Brick's
the cafeteria, the Davis room in the SAU. I generally don't hang out and eat, but when I'm there, hanging out, waiting for the food or whatever, I talk to students. I talk to as many students as I can just to find out what's up, what's going on, how you feeling, how's this semester going. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know students aren't exactly the most fond of Gracie's in particular. Have you ever eaten there personally?
Yeah, I have. I've eaten there, 2 or 3 times. And when I ask students about Gracie's, I get 2 very different answers. There are students that don't like Gracie's for sure. And there are other students that say, it's fine, I don't understand what they're complaining about,
Yeah.
And so I think it depends a lot on what you're looking for. But I'd love to hear from the 3 of you. What do you think about Gracie's, and why is it that some people don't like it and yet others do?
I think I'm the only one who likes it here, probably.
Okay.
I ate there almost every day when I was a freshman. So I don't know.
I liked
Certainly,
that. I liked that it had the all-you-can-eat, the swipes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
because I would go rock climbing, I would just want to get a lot of protein and get a lot of right. And it's great for that. I think people don't like it if they're going often, and maybe the food's a little bland or it's repetitive. And I think actually we saw a very big improvement from. I just went back recently this semester, just one time,
Okay.
and I was like, the pizza was definitely not as good as it is now. So I think there's definitely some changes happening there. But what do you think?
I definitely like the all you can eat aspect. If I'm really hungry and it's the middle of the day, I'm like, I don't want to pay a ton of money for all this food.
Right.
You can go and just eat, but from my perspective, it's a lot of greasy food. There's not a lot of healthier options there, and that really starts if you eat it day in and day out. It really starts to oh man, I don't want to shovel all this grease into my body again.
Fair.
You don't consider that to be one of the essential food groups?
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. And for the folks that have been not fully happy with dining on campus, they've told me that get away from the chicken fingers and the fries and all this kind of stuff. And there are healthy options available on our campus for sure. But I think some students would like to see those more prevalent. Yep.
Yeah.
So we don't have a ton of time left. We're curious, what are your plans for retirement? You're retiring at the end of this year. What's the future look like for you?
Yeah. So my wife has been kind of tugging on my coat for a little while. We've got 6 grandchildren, and none of them reside in the Rochester area, unfortunately. Otherwise, we would stay here. But we've got 3 grandchildren, and 2 of our 4 sons are in the Ann Arbor, Michigan area. So we'll move back there. And my wife, she's a nurse. She volunteers in Rochester and at St. Joseph Neighborhood Center downtown, and she just loves that. But she claims she's giving up her many-decade career of volunteering. And I think on my side, I might still do a little something at the University of Michigan when I'm back there, but maybe not a lot. I have a lot of hobbies I've put to the side. So musical theater, gardening, landscaping, all kinds of outdoor activities.
You mentioned hiking earlier.
Yeah, hiking, woodworking. I've got a wood shop that hasn't been assembled now for more than 2 decades, and I've still got all the tools. So I think I'm going to be pretty busy, and I hope that I end up having too many things to do and can't choose from among them. The other thing is I've been privileged to do a lot of travel in my career, but almost all of the overseas travel has been associated with going to technical conferences or in the case at RIT, visiting our overseas campuses, that sort of thing. It'll be kind of nice to actually just point at a map and my wife and I can just decide where we want to go because we just want to have some fun.
That's really
Absolutely.
nice. So how do you feel about the future of education, just in general, like where we're at right now? I don't know. One thing that
And
comes
here you're
out
talking
is-
about higher ed, K through 12, or the whole 9 yards?
I
or-
mean, one thing, for example, is AI. I think is
Yeah.
really changing the way students
Yeah.
learn
Yeah, yeah.
and do their schoolwork,
Mhm.
and just technology in general is changing it. I think, in general, I feel like education hasn't been able to keep up quite as much as the rate of improvement has with technology, especially with generative AI in the last couple of years. But like, how do you feel about that? How do you feel like it's affecting the education of the students here? And
I think we're just starting to see some of the effects. And let me go a little off script here and say I think that the social media is having a pretty bad influence among
Certainly.
youngsters in our
We
country.
have a whole episode on that.
We have
actually.
a
Okay,
whole
you know,
episode
we
about
just
social
saw that
media.
Australia's banning it, right, for kids
Right.
up to 16 or
Yeah.
something, and I watch my own grandchildren. And it's like, holy cow, you guys are going to grow up with no social skills at all.
Right.
You know, so concerned about that, and we've seen big changes in mental health status of young people. And all of that is heavily correlated with the rise in social media. So I worry about that. On the other hand, I think that technology can be very useful in education. You know, I think we're gonna see these personalized AI buddies, AI tutors. You're gonna have your own buddy there, helping you not just teach you the rudimentary parts of calculus, but maybe this AI system is going to understand what it is conceptually that you're not getting. And
Yeah.
the AI buddy can make those lights click on, and so you don't sit there beating your head against the wall for 3 hours trying to figure something out, and then finally it becomes clear. But rather, it's good to try hard at something and not get the answer right away. But at some point, your AI buddy says, "Hey, have you thought about this, or did you try this?" And maybe without giving you the answer, you say, "Oh yeah, now I get it." I think we're going to see a whole lot of that. And of course, we've even got some students here. There's one student in particular I'm thinking of where this was a little bit after ChatGPT came out. And he was a first-year student, I think the next fall, taking calculus and said, I sure could use some help. He constructed his own AI tutor, and they started sharing it with his friends. And then next thing he's taken a physics course. No, I could really use a physics tutor.
Yeah.
Constructed his own physics tutor, and again, sharing it with friends. I think we're going to see a whole lot of that sort of thing. But I also think, given that this is RIT, we need to have AI infused in kind of visible ways, not just I'm sitting in my room working with my AI buddy. But and I think some of this is going to be a combination of AI and robotics, where we need to have robots wandering around the campus doing things for us, right?
Yeah.
Because this is RIT. And more than just cutting the grass or, shining the floors or
Right.
something, mopping the floors. And so just what are those things going to be? I don't know, but we see a lot of robots being employed in industry now, and they're starting to be employed in healthcare, including on the floors in the hospital.
yeah.
And so what's going to happen here at RIT, and can we invent what that will be? That sounds like a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, that's great.
So we have a couple minutes left. Do you have any advice for future generations of RIT students or for the next president, your successor?
For students, I guess I always give a new student the advice of your first semester here, burrow into your courses, make sure you're doing okay. And as soon as you feel like you're doing okay or even halfway okay, start exploring what are the kinds of clubs and activities, other things you can get involved in, because most of our students, I think, receive about half of their education outside of the classroom. And I think you all are probably examples of that. So that's one piece of advice. And then I also suggest to students, study something that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And even if maybe that degree by itself doesn't seem to lead to exactly the job that you imagine, while you're here, you can kind of fill your toolbox. Even if you're majoring in the liberal arts, you can still learn how to code. You can learn tech. And we got a lot of students in liberal arts, art and design that are really very savvy technologically. And yet they're majoring in, it might be some kind of digital new media or animation or some digital version of the humanities. And so I think you need to work on something you're passionate about, because when you're passionate, you work hard, you learn a lot, and then keep going. And a third piece of advice I guess I have for somebody that is graduating is that first job is just a beginning point, and I'm not encouraging people just to hop around and change jobs every couple of years just on a whim. But it's not possible to predict how your future is going to unfold. And so you get into that first job, or maybe you go to grad school, and opportunities present themselves. And when they present themselves, you just get involved, you make yourself useful, you don't sit on the sidelines, and then a career unfolds. And in my case, I wouldn't have had a clue as I'm sitting there in high school that I ever would have been a university professor, or even when I was an undergrad. When I was an undergrad, there was no way I would ever be a university professor. And when I was a university professor, there's no way I would ever be a department chair. And when I was a department chair, there's no way I would ever even think about becoming a dean. And when I was a dean, are you crazy, becoming university president? I would never do that. Mm-hmm. But what happens is, as you go through life, you accumulate a set of experiences that prepare you for the next stage if you decide to choose it. And then things kind of unfold in a pretty natural way. And then a different kind of comment is that I hope that whether it's our students or alumni, that they stay very engaged in a civic-minded way in our nation. And I'm not going to make this any kind of political speech, but I'm more concerned about our nation probably than I ever have been before. Mm-hmm. And it's because it's really hard to get the straight information and to know what's real, what's not real. We're really in an age where it's the craziest things that get lots of attention. But the craziest things, we probably shouldn't be spending so much of our time thinking about the craziest things. It's like, let's think about policies that will actually help people and make the world a better place, and not just advance all kinds of nonsense on social media and conspiracy theories and what have you just to get attention. Mm-hmm. And I feel like our nation's population, or at least a large fraction of the population, is pretty distracted away from what actually matters. And I hope people will, and part of this is K through 12, I hope that we actually learn how the government is supposed to function, how a democracy is supposed to function, the proper role for the press, the proper role for the judiciary, and all this kind of thing. I think we all need to understand that. Otherwise, this thing that people have spent a couple hundred years building, it could actually start to crumble. Mm-hmm. And so I'm concerned about that. So on a downer, I hate to end that way, but I hope people pay attention and accept the responsibility.
Hey, but it seems like it's kind of technology getting us into those kind of situations with especially misinformation. So it's good technology that'll get us out of it.
Yep.
And that's something RIT can help create, and our students that come out of it.
Yep, I would agree with that.
Yep. But it's been a pleasure having you today.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Munson.
Fantastic talking with you.
Nice to meet you, and very best wishes finishing up the semester.
Yeah,
the end is near.
The end is
Thank
near.
you so much.